What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 20 of season 7. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, joined as always by Jack Smith. And if you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure you smash the subscribe button and hit the alert so you never miss a show. And for all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Hit the alert so you never miss a show. Line podcast listeners episodes drop. While you're listening to us if you're listening to us on Facebook or Twitter, make sure you head over to YouTube and help us in our quest to achieve our goal of 1,000 subscribers. I think we're currently around 770, so we have some work to do, but I think you guys can help us along the way here. So before we really get into this episode, the Flyers, back from their mini North Jersey road trip, had one game and they head back to North Jersey for a game against the Devils. But before we talk more, Jack, what can you tell us about Phans of Philly?
Well, Flyers fans, we've got something special for you today. Looking to take your game day experience to the next level? Then look no further than Phans of Philly. With over 14 years of experience, they're the go-to team for putting together an unforgettable travel package for the die-hard Philly sports fan. Why Phans of Philly, you ask? Let's break it down. These guys have spent years building the best relationships with bars, hotels, transportation, and the teams themselves, you name it. Every trip they plan gets better, and trust me, they'll make your experience top-notch. Whether it's scouting out the perfect hotel, finding the hottest nightlife, or securing the best seats in the arena, Phans of Philly has it all figured out. They know how to make your next trip an absolute blast, so head on over to phansofphilly.com. That's phansofphilly.com and book your next Flyers road trip today.
Thank you very much, Jack. That was a superb read. Dude, we have an action-packed show for the viewers and listeners this week. Can't wait to get to our topics. The Flyers, they kind of ran into a rough patch at the end of last week. They ran into some tough games up in New York against the Islanders and the Rangers. They come back home for a game, what was it, last night already, against the New Jersey Devils, and it looks like they have their number this year. They finish off New Jersey 4-2 last night to snap the mini 2-game losing streak. But I mean, there's so much more to talk about tonight, aside from the games and where the Flyers are in the standings and whatnot. Because let's face it, right, Jack? Like, I think what we're seeing now from this team is kind of the Flyers. They're a middle-of-the-road team, not going to be competing for a Stanley Cup, may not make it into the playoffs, but they're probably not a 3 or 4 or 5th worst team in the NHL either, barring a 10-game losing streak or something like that. This team kind of is what they are. They're a team in flux. They're trying to grow homegrown talent, and they're kind of trying to build from within type thing. So a lot's happened in the last week. We're going to talk about Danny Briere's press conference, and that'll be the first thing that'll really kick us off here. There was an article that came out, I think it was the end of last week or just before the weekend, from our friend Anthony DeMarco. And then we want to talk, obviously, the hot topic after last night was Matvei Michkov, and all of a sudden, John Tortorella doesn't know what the hell he's doing developing guys, right? That's the word on Twitter. That's what Twitter would have you believe anyways. So we'll touch on that. There's a bunch of stuff here that I'm not going to spoil, but we have a great show on tap for you guys. So let's get going here, Jack. So Danny Briere's presser. I put out a video over the weekend, kind of tried to summarize it a little bit. I'm sure by now, if you're listening to us live, you've already watched it. If you haven't, make sure you check that out after the episode. But Jack, was there anything from Danny Briere's midseason press conference that sort of stood out to you, or how did you feel coming out of that press conference? Because I know there was a lot of, I think the easy way to feel, I don't want to dissuade you or persuade you either way before I hear your response. So what were your raw feelings after that press conference?
Well, first things first. Anytime I go into one of these, it's with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I think people put way too much stock in this, whether they're bored or just starved for content and hanging on every word, which is just silly. The guy's not going to come out and say, well, I'm going to trade Risto for a first and a third, and then I'm going to trade Lawton for 2 seconds, and then we're going to win the next 3 games but lose the next 4, and then I'm going to go into the offseason. Like, they're not doing that. You're not going to disrespect your players. You're not going to lay out your entire plan. So we'll get into it, but everything is said, I believe, for a reason, and it's said the way it is for a reason as well. So knowing that going into these, and you know me, I've always, especially with the Fletcher era, I couldn't stand these because it's a lot of just team jargon. Now, I think we're getting a little bit more with this front office. So that being said, he's not going to throw anybody under the bus or say current players are, on the trade block and about to be traded. So with that being said, the first thing I noticed is he talked about the goalies. Seems like he really likes Ersson. Seems like he was congratulatory to Fedotov to an extent. But the main thing was he was asked, would there be any potential issues with Kolosov being sent down? And he kind of stuttered a little bit and was like, I have no reason to believe that there would be an issue. And I think a lot of people at first were like, yeah, okay. But then Coley went down. He was sent down and he reported, and he's been playing poorly, but he's been playing. So kudos to Briere there. He lost round 1 to Kolosov. Looks like he came back on 1 round 2. So we'll monitor that situation. He took a shot at Team Canada, which I thought was great when it came to his prospects, particularly Luchenko, saying, yeah, he wasn't really utilized how we thought, and he's one of the best, fastest skaters there was, and they chose not to use him that way. And when you consider how not that Luchenko is a game-changing player for that tournament, but the team didn't do all that well at all either. So I like the dig because he definitely should have got more playing time. So other than that, the other 2 things that I think are definitely worth discussing would be, he was asked, I want to say by Kevin Kirk from The Athletic, about the 1C issue, which is obviously, we've talked about this at length. So I don't remember what the question was. It was essentially, what are your plans to acquire a 1C? To which Briere said, I quote, the reality is there's not a lot of high-end centers in this league. Teams have them. They want to keep them, or the price is crazy. End quote. My response to that, yeah, no shit. That's why we're a little worried about how you're going to do this. That's why we have a lot of questions. That's why people like me are pushing to trade players now and acquire draft picks, or maybe look into making that trade if you can, based on who's available. I say that understanding it takes 2 to tango, but at the same time, this is the first year and maybe the only year you have 3 first-round picks and other assets as well. And that turned off on me. So yeah, did you want to comment on anything I said before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of fine with most of his responses, but no, keep going.
And then the only other thing really worth mentioning, and it kind of goes with the trade deadline, it was about Risto. And I guess he was just asked if he would trade him now compared to the offseason. I think Charlie O'Connor asked this question. It's about Risto being moved, essentially. To which Danny said, quote, there's teams that have called to inquire, but Risto has been so good for us. He's not a rental for us. There's no rush. We finally have him healthy. We finally have him playing extremely well. To find the right shot D like that and to play in our top 4, to play as physical as he does, they're tough to find. We have him here for us. We get excited about trading him and thinking about the return we can get. I'm not shopping him. I'm not trying to get rid of him. He's a big asset for us, and it would be a big hole if we ever had to lose him. I really don't know where it's going. I can tell you I'm not shopping him. I did receive some calls on him. End quote. So, to me, if I were to take that as is, as presented, I'd be a little worried. I'd say, yeah, that's a problem. You need, in my opinion, if you guy's good, he's not a part of your future, you should at least be entertaining offers more than receiving calls. You should be a little more active. Not saying you need to get something done. However, I know that a lot of these pressers are jostling for position. It's setting up. You don't want to come out and say, yeah, everybody's available, or this guy's available. You want to make it seem look, we don't have to trade this guy. He's got term, and that term is looking better and better with each good game Risto has. So I think he's positioning himself to be dealing from a position of strength. And I think you can't do that by throwing your guy, I don't want to say under the bus, but just being like, yeah, he's available. What's your best offer? Kind of making it seem like we don't have to trade this guy. We can make moves in the offseason. We can make moves next offseason. I see you shaking your head, Jim. And I just want to say,
well, we talked last week, and he pretty much said everything I was saying. That's why I'm kind of like,
and I agree. He did say that. He did say that. However, he should still move him at the deadline. And this better get somebody into a bidding war. And there's a lot of teams who could definitely use Aristo. But that being said, it's true. It's not the end of the world if they don't move him. However, I don't think based on what he said word for word, it does kind of lead this way, but I'm not buying it. I think that he's definitely still available at the trade deadline, and we'll see if he's moved or not. But I don't think this is, poo-pooing that completely and taking it out of the equation by any means. I think this is just setting up something for the trade deadline when it comes.
No, yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it was true in him complimenting Ristolainen. And I think it was also true when he said, we don't have to trade him. He's under contract for not just 1, but 2 more years. And he's playing extremely well. He's playing very, very well. Like, he played top pair minutes last night against a very good New Jersey team. And it's just rare that Ristolainen makes a mistake. And he's just kind of fun to watch. But anyways, I'm sorry. I think Danny Briere was being true. You said, you mentioned complimenting the player. He's not going to bash his player or say, hey, we're looking to get rid of this guy as fast as we can. When he's talking to the media, he's not only talking to fans, he's talking to other GMs, and so he's not going to come out and say, obviously, we're looking to move this guy and we're going to take whatever we can get, but the right deal's got to be there. No. He's leveraging. He like you said, he's in the driver's seat with Ristolainen. He doesn't have to move him, but if someone's going to come with an offer, like this is a player that teams want right now. Do you know does that make sense? This is a player that teams should call up and they should want. This is not a player that the Flyers are going to give away. If he was on a 1-year deal, this was the last year of his deal. Yeah, then you might want to be like, okay, well, we really got to figure something out here, because if we don't, we're just going to lose this guy for nothing. No, right now you have a very good player, a guy that can all of a sudden flex into your top pair and not look silly. You should get exactly what you want for him, and then in my opinion, and I know, there's the injury risk and all that. If 2 years come and Risto is still on the roster, you can still move him for a first-round pick. Ben Sherratt was traded for a first-round pick. David Savard was traded for a first-round pick. And I think Risto is in that class with those guys now, So I know that's not what people want to hear. They don't want to hear that you're keeping Risto for 2 more years. But I'm like, why the hell not? You're still going to get that first-round pick. It's just not going to be now. And in the meantime, so I see Ristolainen as a guy, your big right-sided D. You can pair him with a younger player. You know how teams will go out and, they'll look for that veteran D to pair up with their young D and help kind of move them along. That's how I see Ristolainen right now, and if he's here for 2 more years, that's fine. You have a guy like Andre that can come up, or he's been playing with Igor Zamula of late until Zamula came out of the lineup. But the Flyers have something right now in Risto, and everything that Briere said, I was 100% in agreement with. I think he's doing things the right way here, Let
me ask you a question real quick on that. All right, so let's say they are doing that and they're keeping him for this year and I guess a majority of next year. Is there a defenseman that you're moving off the roster? Because we got some guys I want to see, and it's pretty locked up tight right now.
So if they keep Bristow around,
if they don't trade any defensemen, and I can't see, there's their only unrestricted free agent on like the whole team is like Eric Johnson.
yeah,
So I mean, that's the seventh guy. That's not really a spot you're filling. You just have somebody on the roster.
sure, yeah.
As far as getting regular minutes, I want to see that from Andre. I want to see a guy like Hellsgrons get more opportunities, and Oliver Bonk could be pushing in as early as next year. Maybe not, but still, that's potentially 3 defensemen right there that or we'll say at least 2 that you want to get NHL time with. And if they're not moving Risto, do you really think they're moving? And we'll get into this a little bit later, but like, they move in York. Sanheim's not going anywhere. Sealer's locked up. Somebody asked in our chat here, and it is a good question. No matter what I want, I don't think they're trading Sealer. I think he's going to ride that out. So he's got 1 year left, and then they'll make a decision. He's a bottom pair guy, maybe even a 7 towards the end of that contract. Excuse me. But I don't see the Flyers moving any of the players they've signed in the last 2 years, basically, or year, really. That's when they really re-signed everybody.
Well, I think it could be. I think it could be really easy to, honestly, like so you'll have. This is if Risto sticks around, right? You still have. Let's assume that they sign. Well, they're going to re-sign Cam York. Travis Sanheim's 2. Ristolainen would be 3. Your 4th guy, let's say Drysdale. Sealer's 5, and you still have Zamula around, and then you have Andre, right? And I think Andre should be up now. I think he has a lot to work on defensively. It is a different game between the NHL and AHL. NHL is a lot more structured than the AHL. So I could see a world where it's Andre and Zamula competing for a roster spot. And then it's like, well, who's going to be here long term? In my opinion, I would choose Andre over Zamula. So I'm not sure I'm worried about the same crunch there. I guess that's it. Like if that holds a guy like Gron's out, then kind of so be it. But there's going to be injuries at the same time too.
There will be injuries. I feel like I look at the roster this year, and there's probably not going to be much turnover. Hopefully, I'm wrong. And I just feel like there's guys that we want to see that we're not going to be able to see. Hunter McDonald's another name that got brought up. That's more the team pushing him on us. But it's like you're in a rebuild. And there's people like asking if we'll keep Risto. And I mean, he's already 30. Mm-hmm. He's not injury prone, but injuries have crept up on him. He's been good so far. So it's all part of the pie for me. Playing time for these young guys that are supposed to be part of your future, or finding out what you have, getting assets back, because as we kind of alluded to, we'll probably go back to it, acquiring a 1C is truly going to be a big issue here. They're going to need all the ammunition they can get, and whether that's Risto on his own or whatever they get for him, that they're going to need it. I think they're truly going to need it. I don't know what they're going to get, but whatever they do get, and if they're serious about going out and getting a 1C, they're going to need it. And then like, I don't see the guy when this team is ready to roll. When, let's say, Michkov's 25. That's 5 years from now. He'll be like 35, 36 years old. He'll be out of the contract. He'll be done. It's just, he's not a part of the future. So, I get it. And I do want there to be a veteran guy along. I don't want him to just throw him to the wolves. But I do think that, if you have York and Sanheim, you're okay there. I don't think it's like you need to bring somebody in. So it's all young pups and rookies on the team. I do like what the guy brings. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to miss him when he's gone, but that's also why they could get something juicy for him. And I can't, me, man, with the draft and where the team's at, it's something a rebuilding team does. This is the same. It's similar conversation to last year, except for the expiring contract of Sean Walker. He fit, and they were better last year than they are this year. And that was without Michkov. He was a true fit, and you still move the guy for a price you wanted, which maybe that's what Briere's doing. He was told he's not getting a first for Sean Walker. He sure as hell did. Yep. So maybe there's something to that with Risto. I understand they don't have to move him, but I do want them to move him. This is not a guy. I want them to ride out the contract. God forbid something happens. Maybe it is in the offseason. Unfortunately, haven't seen a whole lot of offseason action from this team, so I'm a little grain of salt with that. Or they basically traded Provorov. That was it. Yeah, so
yeah, I mean, they've done things in the offseason, just nothing that really ever added to the roster. Like they've shedded guys and kind of kicked the dead cap down the road a little bit, and they've done stuff like that. To me, the last few off seasons were kind of like setup off seasons for the next 3 or 4 off seasons. And I know that sucks to say, but like that's just kind of what it looks like to me.
okay, well,
You know,
real quick on that because I agree, but the only thing with that is the movement we wanted to see was bringing something in.
yeah, it's not happening.
A young center, something like that.
Not happening right now.
Definitely not a free agent signing.
And this is my thing. Like it's.
But bringing somebody in is a future.
It's not happening. Yeah, it's a future thing.
Trading Risto is a rebuilding move.
Sure.
So that's there's a difference. That's why I'm like, and at the same time, it's like you got to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Like, don't, God forbid, he gets nicked up, next year, and he's not the same. He's not as effective. It's not worth as much. And I'm worried about getting out of the contract because at that point, he's only got 2 years left. How bad can it be? And he's, when he's playing healthy, he's good. God forbid, Bradshaw takes a job elsewhere. He gets a head coaching position elsewhere. I mean, I want some of our young defensemen with Bradshaw now, like not maybe later. I want him up here with him now. You saw what he did for Sanheim. You saw what he did for Ristolainen. Like, I understand keeping him around, but if you can get something for him, free up some cap space, and bring your other guys in here to learn under Shaw and get more regular NHL time, I can't look away from that. And I understand the allure to keeping Risto, but if they get a good deal, and look, I don't know if I'm where you're at, where I want the 13th overall pick. I want a
I don't know if they're going to get
6th, 7th defenseman and a second round pick. I just going off of what you said, like he should get.
Yeah, I mean they should get that. Like it should be a deal that kind of blows their socks off.
Look, I wanted the ask to be high. I would love to see these teams. If he's really a good GM, you could start a bidding war with several teams. And Ristolainen, he's going to be the top, unless I'm forgetting somebody, the top defenseman available. And he's got a lot of aspects that these GMs love. And we already joke about the myth alone of playoff Risto actually happening and coming to fruition. Like it's just, his value is sky high right now. Could it be that in the offseason? Yeah, probably, maybe. But I know for a fact right now it's sky high and teams get freaking goofy at the trade deadline. They get goofy as anything. You could be like, well, we get him in the offseason to make a playoff run. Well, what if you have a bad season and miss the playoffs? What if your star player gets injured and you're just not the same team? You're here. You're in a playoff position. You're good now. This could be the missing piece. And you got him going forward. So look, I'm all for get your price or more. Don't trade him for the sake of trading him. But my God, I expect him to be gone at the deadline.
I get that. Yeah. I think I mean, you know how I feel already. Everybody listen. If people listen to last week's show, go listen to last week's show. I'm still of the same stance. It should be a deal that the Flyers want to make, not that they have to take. Does that make sense? They
definitely should not. We've passed that ship sailed. We're just getting rid of them. That's gone. Yeah. That's gone. And let's say there is a he gets a couple teams bidding against each other, and the best offer he can get doesn't have a first round pick in it. Then keep him. That's
right,
ridiculous. Yeah. There's no way that he should go for anything less than starting with a first. I'm not
starting
saying
with a first. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's 2 firsts or a first and a second, but I'm saying like you need to have first in a deal. You've seen so many lesser players go for more. You just named 2 defensemen that I think he's currently, based on when he's going to be traded, is better than. But Sherratt and who else did you say?
Man, now I can't remember. Oh, David Savard.
Would
there was another guy in there too, but yeah, I can't remember.
Would you rather have those defensemen or Ristolainen right now? Because it's not even close for me.
So here, let me just say this real quick. So I think the Flyers are leaning towards. They say they're not shopping him, but if you notice how they're deploying Ristolainen of late, they sure are trying to showcase him. They had him playing on the top pair last night. They have him playing on the power play. They are trying to showcase Ristolainen, in my opinion. They're asking him to do more. in the offensive zone. He's pinching more. He had 2 assists last night, one via the power play, thanks to Bobby Brink, a Brink bomb. But I think that they're doing their very best to show, hey, this guy still has offensive ability, and he is top 4 defenseman in terms of defense alone. Like, this is a very valuable player. So I don't buy that they're not shopping him. I assume they're taking calls. I guess my stance is that if you don't get exactly what you're looking for at the deadline, that's not your trade deadline. That's everyone else's trade deadline for Risto. You could still keep him. Does that make sense?
Yes, which is why you don't have to pull the trigger unless you get something you want. Ask should be high, but I really would be shocked if teams don't meet that ask.
Well, I'm just saying, I think, and I mentioned this last week, I think, like, at the trade deadline, there will be, let's just say on the high side, 5 to 6 teams inquiring on Ristolainen, right? And it's the only teams, it's the teams that are on the playoff bubble, or the teams that think they can make a real run at the Cup, something like that. In the offseason, you'll have, I don't know, how many middling teams are there in the Eastern Conference that think, oh man, we were just a big right shot defenseman away from, getting into the playoffs kind of thing. Does that make sense? You'll have more suitors. Somebody mentioned in the comments, the cap will go up. There's just more flexibility and more suitors, more teams inquiring to do something that makes sense for you. Like, the deadline is just a deadline for this season. It's not a deadline to move Risto.
Right. The only thing is with the offseason, I know that seems like better, and maybe it could be, but yes, there could be more teams available, but there's also more players available. All teams are trying to remodel or remold their teams in the offseason, especially if you didn't win the Cup. Like, I mean, anybody who did not win the Cup is trying to change something. So it's just a huge playing field, and teams aren't as goofy because they have all summer. There's no deadline. They have all summer. They can play hardball. They can wait you out, and ultimately nothing gets done. And I guess in that scenario, well, Risto's still a Flyer and he plays again, sure. But like, I don't know if his value is truly ever going to be higher. The cap's going up. His cap number is only for 2 more years, and it ain't that bad when you look at how he's playing. He's exactly what a playoff team was wanting. And when I keep saying that because those guys get acquired at the deadline. And I have as many as like 8 teams I could see him be interested in him. And I don't see very many other defensemen. If this was a year where like there were 2 defensemen ahead of him that could be moved and he's third on the list, maybe I'm a little more inclined to play things out, but he's going to be the guy. Like, I can't think of anybody else, and I could be wrong. I may be missing somebody, but at most it's one other player. And the East is all clogged up. So you have all those suitors potentially. Flyers are in that mess, and they're still trading players, which is what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be in a situation where they are dangling players that they could. I have a list here. I'm just going to run down it real quick. You could have the Dallas Stars, who, if you remember, acquired Kristanov last year. Obviously, they didn't re-sign him. Detroit Red Wings, who have been trying to get in the playoffs for quite a while now, and he would definitely fit what they're missing. The Edmonton Oilers, I'll always need defense. Florida Panthers, they lost a lot of players. I could definitely see them trying to move some things around and grab him to reclaim their title. Tampa Bay Lightning as well. You know how who they move out this year? What's his name to Utah? So Sergachev. So they could always use a defenseman. I've brought up the Maple Leafs plenty. Them and Risto make way too much sense in so many regards. The Canucks, depending on where they're at, the Winnipeg Jets have already inquired, according to rumors. I don't know how many teams I just named, but that's like a lot of names right there. I haven't brought up anybody else. I haven't talked about Colorado or Boston or anybody like that. Like, there is plenty of teams that you can dangle Risto and get some kind of bidding war. And the second and third tier defenseman another team might have to go for is almost not nearly the same, not worth it. Doesn't bring as many factors to the game. And he's playing probably his best season of his career. I mean, it checks every box to trade him as much as you can at this deadline.
Yeah, I disagree. I like him, and so there's a comment here about getting bigger, and I think Risto is your biggest player.
I agree with getting bigger, but he's 30 years old. He's not a part of your future. Here's what they should do: trade Risto, and in like 2 years, sign Aaron Ekblad. Hey. So, and then there's Hunter McDonald. So there you go. But I mean, look, if Risto was 26 years old, we're not having this conversation. He's 30. He's 30. And the Flyers have repeatedly said it. It's just going to be a slow rebuild. Mishkov's 20, freshly turned 20. They're not getting going until he's like 24, 25.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no rush, you know.
That's your line.
What's that?
There's no rush, Jim, but it's a value. I want to trade him when the value is the highest. I don't know if I see the value being higher than it is right now.
It is high, yeah. And, you know, we keep coming back to, hey, if the deal's right, go for it. If it's not right, you got the summer and you got next trade deadline, you know. Okay.
Look, you can't lose. I'll say that much. You can't lose.
Yeah, you would think. They shouldn't lose. That's for sure.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so there was another comment in here. There was a few comments. And
some good comments.
I was kind of giggling, Jack, because I'm wondering a month or so ago, do we see these type of comments? You know, I think we had a show and we had a big conversation about this. And Dan Knightley chimes in, our good buddy Dan. Flyers desperately need size up front and on the back end. York is the odd man out in Dan's eyes. And Jack, tell me the truth. Before we really had a conversation about Cam York on our show, I'm not sure when, do you think we would have seen a comment like that about Cam York? We talked about it last year also.
When we had our poll about trading him for a center, the people who came out of the woodworks to defend York, it was so one-sided.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say blind because that's not right.
No.
But like, it's kind
York
of
had a good year last year. Everyone was riding high off of that.
He did. But what did you say all last year?
Second pair D.
Is nothing more than a second pair defenseman. And so it would Ekblad technically be. I mean, he could play on your first one, but he's got the size. York doesn't have any of that. He magically unlocked his offensive game, which we thought we drafted him for. I'm not against it. He's a good defenseman. He's a guy I would love to have around. But some of the numbers I'm starting to hear that he would want, I kind of find it baffling. Do you want to jump into that real quick?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Some of the contract numbers and
for York.
So there was an article by Anthony DeMarco that came out suggesting with some of the four restricted free agents could be in play for it. I don't think Frost was actually listed. It was really Case, York, and Tyson Forrester. So let's talk about York. We're here right now. You heard it on a different site. I read it in this article. York could be looking at something in the 6 to 8 year range for $6 to $7 million. How do you feel about that? Let's go. I want to hear the max, 8 years, $7 million, or 6 years, $6 million. Where do you feel? How do you feel in that any of those numbers?
So this was my thing the whole time, right? Like, number one, I hate it. Number two, like, he's going to be making more than Travis Sanheim.
Yeah, and I know Sanheim is better, but he got overpaid based on what he had done. So I feel like he's played himself into that contract.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The same way like Risto has. Like, now that Sanheim contract, especially with the cap going up, is a really great contract. You know, we hated it at first.
Right.
But now it's like, Sanheim at $6 million a year for how long? That's
could you imagine solid. York signs 8 year extension worth $7 million. 8 years was that $56 million. My math's off.
It's not good.
I mean, like 7 years. I mean, I'm sorry, $7 million. York? What?
This is
no. Come on, man. Don't do that. Please,
if you guys, so I know a lot of the listeners, and I see a lot of new names tonight, but for the last 2 years, I've been saying the Flyers wanted to lock York up long term 2 summers ago now. York's camp, they knew the cap was going to go up this summer. And so they signed a bridge, right? Remember when everyone was questioning, oh, they only gave York 2 years. They only gave Cates 2 years, whatever. They wanted to sign them each longer than 2 years. Their agents knew the cap was going to go up. So sign the bridge, have a couple good seasons. Cates is having a potentially career year now. York, not so much. He had a really good year last year and has had trouble following it up since being hurt. But this was always going to be what was going to happen for Cam York. Now, some people might say that he's worth that. And I'm not one of those people. And it sounds like I'm a hater. I'm just trying to honestly evaluate this player. In the article that Anthony wrote, there was I forget who he said. I think he just said it was a person around the NHL or something, but they see York as a second pair D on a Stanley Cup caliber team or Stanley Cup contending team. And that's what I've been saying for the last 2-3 years. When I watch Cam York, very good defenseman, but not a top pair D. And if I'm judging the Flyers and I'm looking at them like I want them to build a Stanley Cup team, Cam York's a second pair guy playing on the top pair. He's not a top pair guy. He's a top pair guy on a bad team. He's not a top pair guy on a really good team. Does that make sense? Does that make sense for the people who are maybe aren't clear on how I'm describing York? There's nothing wrong with him as a defenseman.
No.
But he's not a top pair guy on a really good team.
Let's be real. The guy didn't accept the long-term deal the Flyers wanted to do. It wasn't last year. It was the year before, right? It was a 2-year deal he accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he bet on himself. When you do that, you bet on yourself. And I'm not saying he bet poorly or he was wrong, but he's definitely not a $7 million defenseman. I even argue he's not a $6 million defenseman, at least not yet. Sometimes when you sign these contracts, you grow into that contract. Like go with Konechny back in 2019. Like people gave us a real hard time for, what was he, $5.5 million or something? Like for that contract. And he obviously blew past that. Do I see York doing that? Probably not. But I mean, if you're signing him for 6 to 8 years, you're really nailing yourself to a guy that you could probably find elsewhere, like you've been alluding to. And the idea that these numbers are even at 6 or 7 are just, that's ludicrous to me, especially for that term. If you're going to go 8 years, 6 to 8, the max you can go, that number has got to come down a little bit. That's crazy. Yeah. Like I know that it's his prime years and all, but had he in those 2 years that he signed really like developed his offensive game as an all situations defenseman, is just doing things out of like we didn't expect he could do, and pretty much been how Risto has been. If he was that guy, and I'm not talking about just the physicality, just overall good play, then we can talk. But I haven't seen that. He hasn't played bad, but he's definitely not a guy that I look like, oh yeah, that's a $6.5 million defenseman. Hell no, I don't see that at all. And you can see by our comments. Everybody, nobody's mentioned 6 or 7. It's all $5 million, somewhere in that range. And I agree with that. I don't think he's $6 or $7 million worthy at all, especially for that long of term. So I don't know if that forces a trade or what, but like those are kind of crazy numbers, man. I heard the Flyers will at least use Sanheim's contract as a, like, hey, you can't make more than this guy. You're not as good as he is. And there'll obviously be some pushback, but like he should not be making $6 million is my absolute ceiling, in which I'm sure he could creep a little bit if he had to. But I already don't like where this is going. Like it's I'm uneasy. It's replaceable, and he's a chip. He's a big chip in a potential trade if we ever do one. I know that it takes 2 to tango, but I'm getting a little tired of seeing that after some of the trades we've seen. Mikko Rantanen, and no, I'm not saying the Flyers should have been in on that. That's ridiculous. But the point is, big earth-moving trades do happen. You have to have the balls to make it happen. And York, just like your first-round picks, should be a big asset trade piece to go get something you need. We'll see what it is. We'll see what they do. But I am not down for locking this guy up for that long for that kind of money.
Nah. And, I mean, that's kind of where I've been coming from this whole time with York, because the writing's been on the wall, and I've been trying to tell everyone York's going to want a lot of money. Like, he signed his bridge because he's going to want to get paid, and if the Flyers are rebuilding and trying to clear cap space, and one of the luxuries of developing and drafting a lot of defense is, hey, if a guy wants too much money and he's good, not only do we have somebody that can replace him, but we can trade this guy for a position of need. right? Isn't that what rebuilding is, Jack? Like if you have a surplus of talent out of position, and I'm not saying right now that Emil Andre, I'm not saying Emil Andre is as good or better than Cam York today. I'm not saying that. But I think that you can move York and Andre can be just as good in another year or so. Like what is it about Cam York that people go crazy for? Somebody tell me. Like,
so here's an interesting comment. I don't think it'd be in any world it'd be a 1-for-1, but do you really think the rest of the league views York as like, not interested? Because I don't think he's that bad. I mean, I don't think he's bad at all. I'm just like something like I don't think that gets it done, especially the way Rossi's played this year. But he could definitely be part of a package. Like I don't know why a team. I don't know what the package would be. I don't know who we're talking about here. But if a solid young second pair of defensemen who could probably play in your first pair if you needed him in a pinch or you had one hell of a number one, why you wouldn't be interested in something like that? Unless you're paying him 8 years, $7 million, then I could see that being a little bit of a turnoff. But, York we have so many first-round picks. York with one or two of those. I understand that some of them are a little bit later, although Colorado's hanging on to a playoff spot. And the Rattling effect, we'll see what happens. I guess we'll see Colorado Sunday, the how do I say this? Rattling-less Colorado Avalanche. So we'll see what happens. But like for multiple first-round picks, a player like York, Frost, I agree with the chat. I don't think he has much value. I think he's on the, he's another RFA. And I don't want to switch gears too quick, Jim, but just real quick. Tell me if you disagree with this. Frost gets a 1-year prove-it deal. And I'm thinking, I think he's making, what's he making now? 2.1?
Yeah, too much, whatever it is.
I was going to say, everybody gets a raise. It is what it is.
Yeah.
2.75, 1-year deal. Prove it for Frost. Because and they need centers. That's true, Shadow. They need centers just to have them until they figure something out. So I don't think Frost is getting moved in any kind of, maybe as a throw-in, but I don't see it. I'd see him sticking around for one more year to figure things out. Literally kick the can down the road. But like a York, a Farabee, multiple first-round picks, a prospect, and they have prospects. I know they don't have, outside of Michkov, I know they don't have like these crazy great prospects, but Bonk's not a bad prospect. Hellsgrons could be a throw-in piece. Somebody mentioned Spencer Gill, guys of that nature. Ultimately, it comes back to the first-round picks. But like, how is there not a world where like that's you trade Risto at the deadline, so you have more ammunition. So when you go into the offseason, you can use that with York and whoever else, and maybe make that deal for a center, whoever's available, depending. Because I know Briere's not wrong. They're definitely not available often, especially young. But it's something that they got to figure out because they're clearly not drafted in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Something needs to be done. Something, if you're not going to do the traditional rebuild where you tear it down to the studs.
I don't know if that is traditional.
What the Flyers are doing is not traditional at all. You are remaining competitive to a degree, and you have players on your team that you would normally move.
That's a tank, though.
Well, rebuild tank. See, now you start to you teeter with retool. You teeter with retool, though.
So there's a tank, and then there's rebuilding the roster.
Rebuild something, you have to break it down. No,
I don't think so.
Well, that's literally what rebuild means. Come on.
No, I don't think that you have to tear it down to
the studs. Maybe not to the studs, but they've only traded Provorov, and with Sean Walker, who they have got in the Provorov trade. So
that's great asset management.
It was phenomenal asset management, but it's not like they should, hit the brakes. Like you got to keep.
I don't think they're hitting the brakes, but I think there's a.
Look, I don't like breaking it all down completely and being so terrible and having this losing culture. I get that, but they've really only moved one guy off their previous team. Luckily, another guy came out of nowhere, played well, which they were able to flip. That's why if they have anybody else, I think they should move on If you identify, unfortunately, based on what we said is our rebuild or whatever, you're not going to be a part of the future. That player should be moved. Like, if I thought their defense was worse off, maybe I could, and I don't want to jump back in the Risto a little too much, but they need there. It's impossible to get a number one center, a true number one center, without getting lucky. Even when you're drafting top 5, you still need to get lucky. And they're not going to be drafting anywhere near that.
I guess my thing is, when is their future? Like, what time period are we looking at for when we're saying, all right, things are really going to get going during these years? Because it's not going to be next year.
I think, according to Briere, the team will let him know.
Like when they start adding, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, like, look, if the team made the playoffs this year, I don't think Briere's going to go, okay, we're ready. I don't think it's like that. But I do think it's more so the younger players. It's going to be Michkov. It's going to be hopefully like a guy like Andre, maybe some of the goaltending if they figure that out. That's another thing, too. If your goaltending is this rough right now, you might as well just add ammunition to Zavragan and Bjarnsson's here, or pushing at that point. But it's going to be those guys when the young guys step up, the Forresters, the Brinks, and the Cates, and obviously the Michkovs, and we'll see who's still here. But like the Farabees and those guys, when those guys start to take off and those guys start to consistently play well, play good, then I think that'll be a signal to Briere. Yeah, it's time to start adding. We did it with not very much based on what we had still here. We have stuff still coming. We have cap space. Let's start to put it together. And I do think, I see Brad Miller here, 26, 27. That's not bad. It might be a year early, and you see Shadow here, 2020. I think it's between there. But ultimately, the team. Oh, there you go. So thanks, Lyndon. So essentially, the team, but the team is going to tell the GM, according to the GM. I don't think he's going to say, okay, we're ready out of nowhere. I do think it's going to really hinge on Michkov. It's going to hinge on their other young players, not whatever they do this year or really even next year. And that's the other thing. Towards Tortorella's, that's next year's his last year.
Yeah,
I don't see him being fired, but I also don't see him being extended. No. So that should tell us something as well.
Yeah. So I just want to remind everyone that the Flyers still have Ryan Ellis's $6.25 million AAV for the next season and the next 2, right? So that comes off after the 2026-2027 season. During the next 3 years, $7.596 million comes off the cap. I'm sorry, they have 7.5 dead cap between Tony DeAngelo, Cam Atkinson, Kevin Hayes. DeAngelo's 1.666 comes off after this season.
You mean the New York Islander, Tony DeAngelo?
Yeah, Tony D. Congrats, Tony D. getting another NHL job. He should have never been out of the NHL, quite frankly. He was good enough to be in the league. Cal Peterson's contract comes off the books after this season, $3.85 million to be an AHL goalie. And then after the 25-26 season, 5.3 comes off the books between Cam Atkinson and Kevin Hayes. So, they'll have around $5 million come off the books of what I think is dead cap or buried cap between DeAngelo and Peterson. So there's something there. Maybe they use that for their RFAs, whatever. The season after, another $5 million comes off the books between Kevin Hayes and Atkinson. And then the season after that, 6.25 comes off the books, Ryan Ellis. So in my opinion, when the Flyers really start looking to add, and this is why I think I'm not getting as crazy as everybody else when it's like, oh, make a move. Because all you got to do is look at what's going on with the roster and the cap space. And it's like, well, in the next 2-3 seasons, almost 15 million of dead cap space that they literally can't use right now is coming off the books. $15 million. They can use that. Oh my God, to sign somebody, to bring somebody in. And I have to look and maybe this is going to sound nuts, but there's going to be some really good players that are going to be free agents. Maybe they don't hit the market. I don't know, but
it looks like you're looking at a list right there, Jimmy.
Well, not exactly, but players like Kirill Kaprizov are going to be
That'd be something.
In 2 years. I mean, he's going to be a little older, but in 2 years, yeah, his contract's up. And at the end of 2025, 2026, a guy by the name of Connor McDavid's a free agent, right? And the Flyers are going to have money to sign him. So, like,
right.
everyone that's crying now, my God, like, just do a little bit of research.
My only thing with that, and I agree, the one thing, no matter who becomes available, is McDavid ain't going anywhere.
Why?
He's not going. Come on, Jimmy.
Why?
Jimmy.
It's not set in. I just read it's not set in stone that he's
nothing set in
stone.
Nothing set in stone, Jimmy. But okay. How about this? Give me this.
Leon Draisaitl's making $14 million a year for a Canadian team.
I think if McDavid leaves, the Edmonton Oilers will fold. It's that bad. No. So McDavid's up there with your Crosbys, your Lemieux, your Gretzky's. That guy, unless he just says, "I'm done. I've had it," and in which case they're trading the guy. They're going to get everything they can for him.
But don't you want your team to at least be in the running to be able to sign him? Like, imagine they go out and they go get a center, right? Like a guy that can flex into your second line or first line. It's like, all right, well, they got their 1C. Or would you rather them at least be in the conversation for players like Kirill Kaprizov, Connor McDavid? There's a lot more than those two, but those are just the two guys that come to mind right away. Like, of course, all you got to do is look at the roster the Flyers have and the dead cap. This is not hidden information. It's all out there for the public to see. You know,
I totally agree with that. I just trying to be a little realistic here. If I'm Danny in the front office and I'm building a plan,
why isn't that realistic though?
Those players don't hit free agency. Kaprizov might, because he's been iffy with Minnesota, but I heard he wants to go like to Chicago or something. But a guy like McDavid, they don't hit free agency. It just doesn't happen.
He's going to have to make.
You're right, though, Jim.
$15 million.
It's the first time for everything.
They're going to have almost $30 million locked up in
realistically.
I mean, Wayne Gretzky got traded, but we're saying Connor McDavid can't go to free agency.
Yes, because the trade was different. Context is key. Why was he traded? For a team,
teams are going to be. They're starting already. They're clearing their salary caps for McDavid now. 3 years away.
Why was Gretzky traded?
I don't know.
Because the owner ran out of money. All that team did was win cups. The owner ran out of money. That don't happen nowadays. I mean, it's funny because it was Edmonton. It's not like I could say it was another team or anything like that. But they got a shit ton of money back in that deal as well. So I don't see it happening. Maybe it does. We'll discuss that.
Well, I know it sounds crazy, but
from a team building
what other reason would they be doing what they're doing unless it's like this is the year that we need to hit on a big time free agent?
Because whoever you pay in free agency, you're overpaying. So you need money. I see them getting second and third tier guys. Unless the first tier guys or anybody not named McDavid. I don't see Kaprizov. I see Kaprizov picking his destination, and I have a feeling it won't be Philly. However, the Michkov connection is nice, but we need centers, Jim. And I can see them. I want them to trade their assets for a center because you can go sign a guy like a winger, like a secondary center, or like a Aaron Ekblad who can play on your first pair or your second pair and replace Risto or something like that. But you're not, in my opinion, and you can point in history, you can't find it, where you go out and get a number one center, especially of McDavid's stature.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah. So if I'm reading the Flyers situation here, I'm not expecting them to add a top line center for at least another season or two. So I'm not getting my hopes up on a big trade. Not even this summer when they have 3 draft picks. If the right deal comes along, sure. I think Danny Briere is smart enough to say like this is a deal we got to make. But I'm not counting on them going out and making a deal for a top line center this summer. At least not one that's going to transform this team into something different. Does that make sense?
Yes, it depends on the age for me. Like, if you go and trade for a 29-year-old center, I don't even know who that would be. I'd be a little like, I don't know if they're there yet. But if they get like a young guy to grow with the team, that's different. Like that's why Pettersson's like a year older than I would have liked, but you can't like. There's no perfect scenario. So I was all for Elias Pettersson. I was all for Marco Rossi. Zegras, I was in on. I don't know how I feel about that now. Nikas comes up. We'll see what happens there. 26. Is he a true center? We'll see. We'll find out. I'm sure he'll definitely play in Colorado because I believe Middlestat lost the 2C spot. So ultimately, we'll see. They may resign in Colorado for all we know. I doubt it because it looks like they're making room for a big Makar extension. So ultimately, we'll see.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. Like, I could see them going after like a buy low type thing. Like Trevor Zegras to me is now a buy low guy, right? Like they kind of fucked up. Like you mentioned, like
hold on real quick. Was that Guido? How do you say that?
I don't know. I don't have it up right now.
We have Jay O'Brien and German Rupsoff. No, we don't. They cut O'Brien and they got a second round pick. And Rupsoff was moved along with Connor Butterman to Florida in the Owen Tippett first round pick Giroux deal. So, no, look, I'll take the Ron Hextall hate. I get it, but those players are no longer in our system. Sorry. Answering a question.
Yeah, I could see the Flyers if they wanted to do a buy low thing. That's fine, like a Shane Wright.
So that's the other thing. It's not like I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. Go trade for a center and you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. That's why I'd be okay with any center they acquire under a certain age. It doesn't have to be a game-breaking guy. Would I prefer that? Of course I would. I don't see that happening. I think they need to draft centers, they need to trade for centers, and need to get buy low guys and see what happens. And so far, look, they drafted Luchenko. I can't be upset. But I would love for them to do something at this point. And I think they need ammunition to do something. So it's a rebuild. I want to see guys moved in a rebuild. That's where I'm at. We'll see. You're talking, 4 years down the line when they're – what year is it? No, 3, 2, 3. I say 3. I don't think
27, 28, something like
26, 27. That's only 2 years. That's too early for me. You never know, but okay.
That would be. Let's see. So this summer would be one off season. After the 25 season, after the 26 season would be 2. So I'm thinking 3 off seasons. So yeah, 3 off seasons from now. 1, 2, 3 would be the off season where I would bet they start doing big things.
I mean, I'm all for big things. We'll see. Oh God, that sounded terrible.
Yeah, you are.
I'm going to take another drink. So I'd be all for them making some big moves with something. I wanted it last season. I wasn't going to kill them if they didn't. But they got to do more than just keep running it back and bringing back all their same players. Like and I'm not saying I dislike these players, but they extended Hathaway, they extended Paling. Lawton's still here. We're talking about Risto still being here. Sealer was signed for like a 4-year extension. Like at some point, they're going to have to move on and start getting players that they believe are going to be for their playoff push and eventually their cup push.
Yeah, but I would agree. But how far away is the cup push?
Oh God, that's 5. Because I don't see them being good and going for the cup. They got to make the playoffs. You got to it's steps if you do it right. So right. That's down the road. But right. They still got to bring in guys that are going to be a part of that team. You're not going to bring them in and then you go unless you have that final signing where the Red Wings sign Marian Hossa and we're like, okay, this is it. Something like that. Like you have to add players that you just know are going to be here. Hathaway, Paling, Sealer. I really don't believe that those guys will be here. And if they still are here, they're going to be minimal to us doing anything legitimate in the playoffs. Could we make it? Sure, but I don't think we'll be a favorite by any means. I think we need to move on from players like that just to get what we can. I don't know how old Hathaway is. I really like our fourth line. I like players like that. I don't think we're drafting or acquiring players for a fourth line. But I just feel like that some of the players that are here, a good chunk of them, won't be here when we're going for it. And I would like to see them slowly start to move on from that.
Yeah, they will. I mean, a lot of them are under contract. So between now and whenever
it's only a couple of years,
2-3 years.
But hey, I'll bring this up. The team is increasing ticket prices for the first time in 6 years, roughly 10%. So I guess we better start seeing something soon. I guess they're banking on the Michkov coming over. They felt it was a good time after 10 years of abysmal play to up the prices. Thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, I guess it sucks for the season ticket holders, and I guess it sucks for everybody else. I don't know how they could really justify raising prices, tell you the truth, but
it's all Michkov. It's the 6-year thing, and it's all Michkov.
Yeah.
What else could it be? It's not like they're, they had a good season last year, but they still didn't make the playoffs. Maybe that's part of it. Playoff revenue, not that Comcast needs the money, but playoff revenue is a big thing, and they haven't been getting any in quite some time.
Yeah. Nah, I don't like it. I'll keep it short and sweet on that. I just,
Yeah, I think it's bullshit too.
The fans maybe they're finally coming back, and while they're coming back, you're going to bump prices up on them. I don't know. If I understand it's a business, but at the same time, tickets aren't cheap as is.
Right. Yeah, and neither is anything in the building. Yeah. But, I'm not a fan, obviously. I guess they got to pay for the new arena somehow.
There you go. Yeah, it's true.
But, it feels very, we had the slight, I don't even want to say success, but the slightest tidbit of super excitement with a player like Michkov and everything they did to get him over here, the Fedotov contract, that whole 3 goalie situation. And it's like, okay, we're raising prices. And it feels dirty in a way. I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but it feels very like, okay, you're cashing in already. You haven't done shit.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah.
But then you come at me, oh, it's been 6 years. I'm like, yeah, well, it's been 10 years since your team gave a fuck and mattered.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is. And Dave comments raising prices is wild. And yeah, it is. But you mentioned Michkov, and I know we're running out of time here. Somehow we're over an hour already.
My fault.
No, it's a good show so far. I think. Let's get to toot our own horn a little bit. But you brought up Michkov, and he only played 9 minutes last night. And of course, we had people on the timeline, Twitter, Facebook, what have you. Torch doesn't know what he's doing. People know more than John Tortorella. They know how to develop a player that's never played in more than, I believe he played in 47 total games last year in the KHL. Guy moves to a new country. He's learning a new league. He's 34 points in his 49 games in his first season over here, which is very good.
Just turned 20.
Just turned 20. So I should add that he's played 49 games in a span of how many months into the season are we? 3 or 4 months into the season?
November, December, January. We're almost hitting our 5th.
Yeah.
Couple days.
So 49 games in a new league, in a new country, all the things he's got going on mentally, physically. Played 47 games all of last season. Like the kid's going to hit a wall, and he's hit it a little while ago, like a month ago. Maybe a month and a half, he's hit that wall.
Yeah, it is what it is. That's why they wanted to bring him over early.
Yeah. Yeah, to get all this crap out of the way, and would it have been nice to see him win the Calder Trophy? Yeah. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I mean,
I'm still not over Scott Gomez stealing it from Gagne.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I mean, I bet on Michkov like everybody else, but it's just it's how it goes, man, who saw – well, I'll say this. I'll preface this by saying this. I thought Macklin Celebrini could have been a better NHLer than Connor Bedard, but I didn't see Celebrini as a point-per-game rookie for the San Jose Sharks. Like, he's having a hell of a season. Then you got what do you got, background noise over there?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? Are you playing music? Oh. Then you got Lane Hudson with the Montreal Canadiens, just having a hell of a season. So, it's going to be tough, and I'm sure they'll fall off at some point too. But I think as long as you can finish this little
come back, Guido. Sorry.
What's that?
New name in the chat. Want him to come back.
Oh. As long as we can finish off this little stretch of games and get them to the Four Nations break, which Russia should be a part of. It's hard for me to take this Four Nations tournament seriously without.
So you're not a fan?
Russia being in it.
Oh, okay. I give you that one. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's you can't say it's a tournament of the biggest hockey nations without Russia.
100%. Yeah.
I think, February will be a nice break for Michkov, get his legs back under him. And then I expect to see him play well for at least another month or so.
I definitely agree with that. Before you wrap it up, Jim, I want to go over our notes real quick. There was a lot we had. I feel like we spent a lot of time. I guess we'll hold off on some things. But to finish up the article, there were two more players I wanted to just ask you real quick. Noah Cates and Tyson Forrester. What kind of contracts do you think they're looking at, or would you rather me just tell you what's been reported or potentially reported?
Reported potentially. And Tyson Forrester. Go ahead and roast reporter. I feel like we talked about that a couple shows ago.
We had our opinions, but according to the article from Anthony DeMarco, Tyson Forrester is looking at anywhere from the 2 to 3 year deal, which is basically a bridge deal at $2 to $3 million.
Sure.
What do you think? I would love like 3 years at 2, obviously, but I think he gets a little more than 2. I'm thinking 2.5, 2 years.
Sure.
And Cates, I like this because when I was asked, who do you think they would sign long term? Cates was my guy, and he's at 4 to 5 years between 3 and 3.5. I would give him 3.5 for 5 years. I don't think that's terrible at all based on how he's played. And I know it's not a huge sample size, but it's not really a small one either. So ideally 4 years at $3 million, sure. Or I'm sorry, 5 years at $3 million. But like everybody's deal I see in this article besides York's, I'm for. So I would be all about that. So that was good to know.
Yeah, I think I could stomach that too with Cates. It sounds like they're giving him more term instead of higher AAV there, which is fine.
I do it. I mean, it's a tradable contract, God forbid. He's been fantastic this year. That line is great. You got to keep them together, or at least put young players with these players. And so there's people out there who's like, you need veteran presence, which I agree with, but like, this is a young, I don't want to say rookie, but basically rookie line. And they're the best line on the team. And they don't have TK, who's having a career year, or Michkov on that line. So that is saying something for sure. So you got to lock these guys up. I'm not saying 8 years, $8 million, but like, come on, for 4 years, $3.5 million, all day for Cates, all day.
Yep, for sure. And get on board with that. No problems there. I think that we covered everything tonight. Anything we didn't cover tonight, we can cover next week, I'm sure. Calder race update. We touched on a little bit. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of the same stuff going on throughout this week. Next week, Flyers are right in the thick of a wild card race. They have 52 points. Last I checked, this was last night, I think Boston has 56 and Tampa Bay has got 55. So, and there's like 4 or 5 teams in between the Flyers and the last spot. So they need to get some more of those regulation wins. They'll have their chance to do it tomorrow night up in North Jersey against the Devils. They'll try to win 3 straight, take the season series against the Devs. And then they follow that up Thursday night with their 3rd game of the month against Maxim Siplikov in the New York Islanders. So it'd be nice to take a win from the Islanders there, another Metro Division opponent. And that would wrap up January.
Yeah, hey, I think this Thursday marks 5 weeks to the trade deadline. I believe it's March 6th. So exactly 5 weeks from Thursday. Start. Oh, baby. Jim, enjoy your time, Aristo. And just cherish every moment. Every moment, baby.
I mean, as we've seen, I'm wondering if the 4 Nations break is maybe we see some deals ahead of the 4 Nations break. We saw that massive Nietzsche's and Rantanen deal, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All for it. Awesome show, Jim. Appreciate it. I don't have anything else. Do you?
No, I don't. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to give us a subscribe. Help us join us on our quest for 1,000 subscribers, and make sure to follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Set alerts so you're the first in line when we drop a new show. And for all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, make sure to head over to hwhockey.net. For Jack, I'm Jim. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Next week. And the chat was fire. Bring it next week. Loved it.